Nassim. I wanted to thank Baba Kofi for the introduction and then the introduction to the introduction. Uh, and I wanted to thank everybody for making the time to come together for this gathering. It's a beautiful Sunday afternoon. There's a lot of different places that you guys could be doing a lot of different things. And it shows your commitment to fight, frankly, in this darkest of times, that you would give up a beautiful Sunday afternoon to come and build this movement. I want to start with an acknowledgement of how dark the circumstances that we find ourselves in actually are. Without a clear-eyed assessment of what we are fighting against, we are doomed in our efforts to resist. And the reality is that many of us, especially those of us that have been living under the boot of white supremacy, those of us that have been living paycheck to paycheck, on and off the streets, fighting against state repression, state violence, carcerality for generations, we've tasted portions of what's to come. But the reality is that none of us knows what's coming next. We are entering a phase of rapid escalation in American fascism. And we need to be honest about that. I just said that I don't know what's going to come next. I'm a historian, not a fortune teller, okay? But my hero, my idol, my mentor at distance, El-Hajj Malik Shabazz, Malcolm X, and I'll talk about my relationship with Malcolm in a moment. Malcolm said, of all of our studies, history is best qualified to reward our research. So I'm going to draw on some examples from our recent history and our distant past as to how we can organize for effective collective resistance in this moment, through this campaign, and beyond this campaign. But I don't know exactly what's going to happen next. The one thing that I do know for sure is that the Democrats are not going to help us. Nope. I'm serious. The one thing that I know for sure is that there is not, in our current political configuration, an actual opposition party to fascism. What we have right now is militarized fascism that comes in blue and red flavors. Okay? Blue and red Kool-Aid, don't drink the Kool-Aid. For those that know Jonestown, don't drink the Kool-Aid. It is poisonous. It is toxic. And that's what we have. We have two toxic, fascist, militarized political parties. So we need, as the Green Party and as a broader coalition of resistance, we need to build an effective opposition, because that effective opposition does not currently exist. And that means we are facing a daunting challenge. We're facing a daunting challenge because Team Blue gave us 16 months of relentless genocide, slaughtering at least 200,000 Palestinians with weapons that were provided with our tax dollars as Americans, thank you, and our tax dollars as Californians. $200 million of Californian taxpayer dollars went into slaughtering children in their sleep, incinerating tents in Rafah. We paid for that, which has created a moral responsibility and a moral incumbency upon us to take action to rectify that injustice. And if that injustice wasn't enough, if that decimation of the Palestinian population, I'm gonna drink this. If that decimation of the Palestinian population, do we know what the term decimate means, by the way? Decimate means to destroy a population. It comes from a Latin term. Roman generals, when they suffered humiliating defeats, would make the soldiers in their ranks count out every 10th soldier, and every 10th soldier would be put to death, decimated. That's why the word that means 1/10 means to destroy. It means when you take out a tenth of the population. Well, we literally have decimated the population of Gaza at least. At least a tenth of the population slaughtered with our tax dollars. And then when we have had the audacity to speak out, to resist, to protest, what have we found? We found the liberals in liberal cities, liberal states, liberal campuses, like my campus of University of California, Santa Barbara, sent 200 jackboot thugs to remove 30 unarmed kids from an encampment. And then what happens after they rip all of these young people who are doing nothing except saying, stop killing people with our tax dollars, stop committing a Nazi-level Holocaust against the Palestinian people? What do they receive in return for these words of protest? Criminalization. And don't think that it just began with Trump. It did not. There were efforts to deport student protesters all throughout the blue half of the genocide. And I know because a close personal friend of mine, Mamadou Tall, recently fled. I had the blessing of sitting with Mamadou Tall in Sufi dhikr circles in Egypt years ago. And now we're in touch as he is, fleeing because this state threatens to disappear him. So we need to be very clear-eyed in our understanding of what we are up against. And this is the part where I'm going to say some things that some of the Green Party folks in this room are not going to want to hear, but the Green Party needs to up its organizational game so that we can become the instrument that we use to fight back. No one is going to walk through that door and save us. We are going to have to save ourselves. We have the greatest electoral access, the best ballot access in terms of electoral outcome in the 2024 campaign. We finished third, not fourth. Right? So we are poised to assume this role of a true opposition party. But it is going to require growth. It is going to require organization. It is going to require new coalitions, new solidarities. All of that is going to take efforts akin to moving the heavens and the earth themselves. Sounds really dark and gloomy, I get it. The Quran, which is the sacred text of reference in my own personal faith tradition, has this habit of using warnings and glad tidings in equal measure. Never say a word of warning without following it with a word of hope, without following it with a word of glad tiding, lest the people be cast into despair. The word of hope, the glad tiding that I offer, is that the power to resist this coming fascism, this return of fascism, is in this room. The power is in the people. The power is in you. But it is going to require organizational efforts that we have not yet undertaken, neither as a party, nor as a movement, nor as a community. Unprecedented challenges to our basic liberties are going to take unprecedented resistance if we are going to rise to the occasion. More on hope. And on the way to telling this part of the story about hope, I'll share a personal part of my story and why I'm doing this in this moment, why I'm taking up this particular fight. When I was 15 years old, I had a life-changing experience. I read the autobiography of Malcolm X. And I read that book cover to cover in one night. Moving from my bed to the corner of my room, laying on my stomach, laying on my back until the whole thing was finished. I could not put that book down. It spoke to me in the interior recesses of my being. And when I got finished with that book in the early hours of the morning, I wanted what Malcolm had at the end of that book. What Malcolm had at the end of that book was complete liberation from all of his internal oppressors and from all of the external oppressors in the world. Even after death, he had survived to free me from myself. Malcolm had defeated his oppressors, the ones that tormented him in his soul and in his heart, and the ones that tormented him in the world. And I needed freedom from internal and external oppressors, because part of the reason why that book spoke to me so intently was that Malcolm was honest about how dark the darknesses really were. He told the truth about what America had done to him, and he told the truth about what his own hands had done. And there was a redemptive power in that, a cleansing in that, especially for somebody like me who had known a lot of those dark places that Malcolm talked about. My father was a locksmith with a 6th grade education and a hustler. When I talk about homelessness policy and the housing crisis in the state of California in a few minutes, I'm not going to be talking about an abstraction of other people's experiences, because I watched my father struggle with homelessness for 2 decades, living on and off the streets, in and out of shelters, grappling with mental health issues, addiction, in exactly the period where Ronald Reagan had pulled the safety net out from underneath all of us, and there was nowhere for my dad to go, nowhere that he could afford to be. And because of those struggles, I saw a lot of dark places. Never lived at the same street address for a calendar year until I was 8 years old, when my mother, who was 15 years old, pregnant with me, told her high school guidance counselor that she was pregnant by a black man. The high school guidance counselor told her to abort the child, lest she be turning tricks and strung out on heroin within a few months. So I knew what white supremacy looked like up close and personal, because it tried to take me out before I got here. So I went to my high school library when I finished that book, and I checked out an English translation of the Quran. That's my personal faith tradition. It animates a lot of my values and how I think about the world. And amongst the many things that I learned to return to glad tidings from that particular book is a truth that actually echoes across all of our faiths and philosophies. If you are a person of faith, or if you are a person of conscience, what I am about to say will ring true according to your tradition, no matter which one it is. Because across all our faiths and philosophies, there is a universal message. All empires fall. All empires fall. Nothing that is taken by force can be held. The glad tiding that I offer you, and the reason why I know that victory is assured if we will organize and if we will resist, is because what I believe we are witnessing is the extinction burst of American empire. An extinction burst is something, so I have a special needs son, 15 years old, almost my size, very autistic, very ADHD. Like I do 12 shots of espresso trying to keep up with him. And what behavioral therapists will tell you about extinction bursts is when you're trying to eliminate a negative behavior, and the negative behavior is actually being phased out, what you are going to see at the end is a massive expression of this negative behavior. What we are watching in Gaza, what we are watching in Palestine, in Palestine, is the extinction burst of Zionism. People forget that the majority of the Jewish people that were massacred at Auschwitz were killed in the last few months of the war, after the outcome of the war had already been determined. These bloody, ruthless, white supremacist empires take out a lot of people in that last extinction burst. With that last dying breath, they deliver massive amounts of harm. And we are complicit in that harm because Israel is, as it was described by Caspar Weinberger, the landed battleship of the United States in the Middle East. That is our colony. That is our genocide. Every single mission that is flown there is flown with our planes. Every single, 70%, not every single, 70 to 80% of the munitions that are dropped, we paid for them. So we are witnessing this extinction burst. If we organize to fight back, we will usher in the end of this corrupt empire and lead to a new day, post-empire, post-white supremacy, post-extractive capitalist murder economies, but it is going to take work that we have not yet done. Let me turn to that work now. When Dr. Jill Stein approached me and asked me if I would consider running for vice president alongside her on the Green Party ticket in 2024, I didn't know how to answer the question. If you run tape, and you can go on YouTube, and there's literally thousands of hours of me speaking and teaching in different community settings, you will never find a single reference before August of 2024 where you hear me talking about running for elected office. Not one. Because for me, that wasn't the critical part of the work. The critical part of the work was always building in communities, and I believe that to be true, right down to the present. What's going to be different about this campaign, and what's already different about this campaign, is that this campaign is rooted in as much in mutual aid and direct action and in reinforcing community organizations as it is in trying to build a political party. The reason for that is that I believe that this particular instrument, this Green Party, and especially this Green Party in California, because California has elected more Greens than any other state in the union by a factor of 2, okay? The California Green Party is going to be the epicenter of this Green Party efflorescence. But why do I believe, in this mode of electoral politics as part of the solution to the problem? Why did I accept that invitation to get tagged in to an electoral political fight? And this goes back to Malcolm again in a different way. Malcolm used to say, we are not outnumbered, we are out-organized. We are not outnumbered, we are out-organized. This is another word of hope, is that while the resources that are arrayed against us are massive, the people have more power than the corporations. The people have more strength, more resilience than any of these corporations. And that's the reason why the repression has become so intense, because they fear the power of the people. Malcolm also said, never let your enemy tell you how many of you there are. You think that you're small in number, but the reality is that the communities that you have at your back and at your side are more than sufficient, if properly organized, to take down the greatest behemoth. Malcolm also said, never let the man that you are against form your opinions for you. Part of what needs to be remedied inside the culture of the Green Party and inside the culture of the opposition of the collective left is the idea that we are fighting against giants that can't be defeated. They bleed just like you bleed. They can be defeated. You have internalized a kind of learned helplessness through the narratives that they have fed us. Never let the man that you are against form your opinions for you. Because I believe that properly organized, and this is the role of a political party, that we have everything that it takes to be victorious. Another student of Malcolm, this one, Kwame Ture, formerly Stokely Carmichael, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. SNCC got into a lot of trouble for their anti-Zionist stance as early as the mid-1960s, right? And by the way, that's also why I knew what to do on October 8th, 2023. Because I've been putting hashtag Zionism is white supremacy in every single post on Palestine that I had ever made since I got on the social media in 2020. Malcolm taught me that Zionism is white supremacy. James Baldwin taught me that Zionism is white supremacy. Kwame Ture taught me that Zionism is white supremacy. They taught me that the black liberation struggle was connected to the struggle of the Palestinian people. It was connected to the struggle of indigenous people to get land back and restorative justice. That the liberation movement is one movement. So Kwame Ture said, and Kwame knew Malcolm in life. I only knew him vicariously through a book, and then lots of one-person meditations. I'm in conversation with Malcolm all the time. It's just that Malcolm that I talk to is like a projection that comes from inside my heart. Kwame Ture got to speak to the actual man. And one of the things that Kwame Ture did with the insights that Malcolm had about organizing is he had a very, very simple formula. He said, revolutionaries do not just mobilize around issues. Revolutionaries organize against systems. I'm going to repeat it. Revolutionaries don't just mobilize around issues. Revolutionaries organize against systems. Now, what have we witnessed in the beginning of this uprising, in the beginnings of this resistance? Let's just take May of 2020, George Floyd murder, as the beginning of an escalation in the resistance, because even at Ferguson, it was still 80% black folks that were out there doing the protesting. But what you saw in the Floyd uprising is something that I had never seen in my entire life. And I have been protesting against police killing black kids since I was 13 years old. What I saw in 2020 that I had never seen was white people outnumbering black people at that event. Can I get a witness from the congregation? Right? None of us had ever seen that. And we perceived that this was a sea change, mass mobilization, people waking up to what the carceral state had done to black people for centuries, to what it had done to my own family. The only surviving pictures that I have of my father where he's wearing a suit, his face looks like Rodney King because he is about to go to court and he's in a suit to try to stay out of jail for the beatings that the DC police gave him. 6 blocks away from where George Floyd was choked out over 8 minutes and 46 seconds, I had a Minneapolis Police Department officer pull his service weapon on me when I was 17 years old, when I reached inside my starter jacket to produce the state identification that he had asked me to produce. And that was in a year where I was stopped for driving while black 17 times, never ticketed. So for the first time, a bunch of people were tapped in to what I knew at the level of my skin, right? And you saw this mass mobilization. Mass mobilization, but was it followed up with organization? Mobilization around the issue of police brutality, not organization against the system that produced it. Therefore, what did we have? We had 4 years of Democrat presidents wherein police killed more people in every subsequent year. They set a new record for police killing people. In every year since the largest mass mobilizations against police brutality in American history. Because it ain't revolutionary to mobilize around the issue. You have to organize against the system that produces the injustice. We have seen now 16 months of resistance to blue genocide, 3 months of resistance to red genocide, and we can't get a ceasefire. We can't get an arms embargo. Why? Because we continue to march. And don't get me wrong, I love me a good march. I love a good protest. And I love the feeling of finding my people in those crowds and seeing how those crowds have become more and more diverse, that there's more and more solidarity that's developing. But do not mistake mobilization for organization, because these are now episodic events that the system has allotted for. They expect you to go out and let off steam in that protest and then get right back to business as usual, not organizing a damn thing. Not too long ago, I was in Sacramento. NorCal Resist had organized a beautiful event, Resisting ICE. We keep us safe. Let's get eyes on ICE so that we can warn people, not with, rhetoric that is going to terrify people, cause people to not go to work. We're not going to play into the escalation of the fear politics, but we're going to provide people with recon, information that they can use to keep themselves safe. And we are going to shout, abolish ICE. By the way, some of us as Muslims, we've been on that abolish ICE, because we remember that that was something that was started after 9/11 and deeply conditioned by American Islamophobia. And some of us tried to warn y'all that if you let them set up this Gestapo-like agency to come after your civil liberties, it's not just going to be the Bilals, Bilal is my Muslim name, it's not just going to be the Bilals and Muhammads that are getting caught up in it. So we see mobilization around this crucial issue of protecting our migrant communities, protecting our immigrant communities. My lovely wife in the back corner room, I won't point, but beautiful Mexican-American woman. Both of her parents came here undocumented before being documented. 23 years my mother-in-law could not see her brother because she feared crossing back into Mexico, not being able to cross back. The same white supremacist power structures that used to split up black families, same reason too, control of a cheap source of labor, let's keep it real. Are now being weaponized for other purposes, but we have these mobilizations around the issue: abolish ICE, immigrants' rights, free Palestine, ceasefire now, arms embargo, Black Lives Matter, mobilize, mobilize, mobilize. Who is organizing the resistance against the system that produces every last one of those injustices? That's the answer to the question. That is the answer to the question, and those are the strongest words of hope that we have. The reason why I accepted the invitation to run for vice president, and listen, we gave him a hell of a run. Yeah. It was the first time that the Green Party had finished third in national presidential election in decades, since the Nader era. So this was a successful campaign in a bunch of different ways. One of the ways that it was successful is that we flipped the Muslim community, and many of you guys don't even know this. But the exit polling conducted by CARE, Council on American Islamic Relations, revealed that 53% of American Muslim voters voted for the Steinway ticket in 2024. 53%. 21% for Trump, 20% for Team Kamala, right? And the rest were divided amongst other third-party candidates. Now, you guys haven't even heard that story, because the mainstream media will not talk about the fact that with targeted messaging towards this community around this crucial issue, we got ourselves elected in the Muslim community. And I know that we can do it again with targeted messaging, active organization in the African American community about liberation politics, about reparations, about transforming the carceral state and eventually abolishing it. I know that we can do this in the Latin community about immigrants' rights, and I know that we can do this in the working class community more broadly on fair wages, on affordable housing, on universal health care. We have the capacity to do this kind of organizing work. We have this capacity to grow. But the reason why I accepted that invitation to take this fight into the realm of electoral politics and to continue this fight here in the state of California is because as a student of history, and again, Malcolm had said it, of all of our studies, history is best qualified to reward our research. There's something that is an inescapable fact in almost every single successful modern revolutionary movement. Political party organizing is right at its core. And the reason for that is that political party organizing is what allows you to channel the energy of the people from mobilization around specific issues that are of interest to individual communities or particular constituencies and turn that into mass organization. A political party, especially one that is not in the pockets of corporations, that is not in the pockets of AIPAC, that does not work for Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, General Dynamics, and the other manufacturers of death. is capable of providing that kind of broad-based organizational structure, but it is going to take work. It is going to take the efforts of every single person in this room. And it's going to mean that the next time that there's a gathering in this room, that everyone that's here today needs to bring 4 new people with them. Even if I ain't coming to talk, that it means that we are going to have to make a commitment to building the organizational structure that will allow us to fight. The last thing that I'll say before we open things up for questions, because I don't want to go long, I mostly want this to be a conversation amongst us about how we get this work done, is that we have a unique opportunity in the state of California. We have a unique opportunity. Whatever happens in the state of California is going to change the trajectory of American history. And they never should have tagged me into this political fight. Because I'm going to tell you, we have this incredible opportunity. So they created this rigged system, the primary system, where it's only the top 2 candidates that advance. And this is something that the duopoly has done in a bunch of different states, trying to make sure that actual people power politics don't emerge from third parties, don't rise up from below. They try to keep, this from ever happening. But it kind of backfires in a weird way in a state like California, where you have as many registered independents as you have registered Republicans. That there is a lane there, that all we need to do to break the duopoly forever is to finish second in the gubernatorial primary on June 2nd of 2026. The reason is that if that happens, whoever the Dems have trotted out there is going to have to deal with me on a debate stage for the next 5 months. And that is going to be game, set, match, Green Party. That's going to be game, set, match, Green Party, because they have mediocre candidates, objectively mediocre candidates. I mean, look, they're talking about Ren and Kamala. Katie Porter's a mediocre candidate. Kamala's a disaster, right? I mean, like a train wreck. Like, she will not survive a debate with me. That's not, that's not a thing that's within her capacities to do. We would all love to see it. So build it. Quite literally, if we are able to build the infrastructure to where we are at 10%, 15% in early polling, they're going to be required to let me up on a debate stage. And that's the reason why we started this campaign early. We are 14 months out from that primary. We need to start building this infrastructure now. We need to be winning this fight block by block now. We need to be fundraising now. We need to be volunteering now. We need to be building a party, an opposition party that is actually capable of carrying this fight effectively. I mentioned that California has an opportunity to do something unprecedented. We have a chance to break the duopoly. I would not have entered this fight if I did not believe that we could win. Because I know that with effective targeted messaging towards one specific community in this last electoral cycle, despite a massive media blackout, we were able to flip the Muslim community. And I know that if each and every one of us does the work to build that community power, showing up in communities, not saying you are interested in this issue is part of my platform, come vote for the Green Party. No, that's what politicians do. Green Party does not have politicians, we have public servants. The way that we have to move to run this campaign successfully in the state of California is that we need to show up for the people in communities that are already doing the organizing work and say, how can we be of service in your liberation movement? That is a political party putting itself in service of a movement, and that's how we are going to win. That's how we are going to be effective. And as Baba Kofi said, that starts tonight. So happy to take questions and open things to conversation so that we can talk about how to get this work done.
Okay, so we're going to open up the questions, and we have a mic for the audience as well. So Who wants to ask a question first? Yeah, I think your hand was up first. There you go.
Appreciate it. One, two, three. My name's Chris, and thank you, Dr. Ware, for those insightful thoughts. A couple of things that I heard that made a lot of sense to me. Um, Stepping up the organization game. I've been interested in the Green Party for a while, but um, I definitely share the opinion of some people who criticize it about coalition building and how they're going to step out. Like, you're preaching to me, everything you said, I agree with. But I think there's a lot of working class people, white working class
Yep.
people, who might be like, they're not that educated to know that about the history. So when you say like white supremacy, they're going to go, oh, and then freak out, or you lead like my wife's trans. But if I was talking to a Trump supporter, I would not lead with trans rights.
Mm-hmm.
I would lead with the economic thing. So I'm wondering, like, just like you mentioned that a powerful influence on you has been history and figures like Malcolm X. I think also what I would hope is that this party would like look also like Fred Hampton and his way of reaching out to the young lords and whatever that Confederate guys were in Chicago.
Yep.
Like, you gotta I really think you gotta step out of your shell and be willing to talk to people who don't necessarily agree with you. And I'm wondering like what your plan is on that, and how you would respond to that.
I mean, the short answer is that politically speaking and from an organizational standpoint, should I stand up? Is it harder to see me if I'm sitting down? I can stand. Yeah, I know, but I was like looking through the crowd of people. Politically speaking, and from an organizational standpoint, the Panthers are the model for everything I do. I mean and just to be clear, so I taught revolutionary suicide in my revolutionary book club online, 2 months ago, and I won't remember the page number, but Huey says that the spirit of Malcolm is with us. Everything that we did, we did in the spirit of Malcolm. So the Panthers' organizational efforts, people forget that the first 6 points on the Panthers' 10-point platform are all survival programs. That's why I always lead with mutual aid and direct action. And I 1,000% believe that kind of coalition building like Fred Hampton was doing, and it wasn't just Fred, I mean, Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale were excellent at doing this kind of work, speaking across identity divides. But let me just be clear about that. They did not speak across identity divides by sugarcoating their language. They spoke the truth from where they were, from their own subject position, and they represented their own communities in an authentic way. And the reason why Young Lords then tapped in is that triggers something in those communities to speak their truth from the standpoint of those communities. I understand that not everybody is, ready to hear about white supremacy in every single talk. But the reality is that the structures of our existence are governed by white supremacy. And without objectively confronting that fact, there is no pathway forward. Without objectively confronting the fact that capitalist exploitation and corporate power, used to be something that was, mostly destructive of Black and Indigenous lives. And now that those extractive elements are impoverishing everyone at massive scale, you have to have an accurate diagnosis of the problem. And I'll just be blunt about this. We were getting more red voters coming to the Green Party in the last 6 weeks of the election than we were getting Democratic voters coming to the Green Party. Yeah. And that surprised a bunch of people. It did not surprise me. I've been teaching at predominantly white universities for my entire academic career. I know how to talk to white folks. They're okay listening to the truth being told to them. And what we saw time and time again is that by not playing into the culture war politics that has been staged between Team Blue and Team Red and keeping it focused on the issues that are of agreement across the board, right? Affordable housing, universal health care, those are not like 60-40 issues. Those are 80-20 issues across the nation. When the United Healthcare executive got debrained in downtown Manhattan, the overwhelming response, yeah, the overwhelming response of the so-called conservatives was, what we would have said back home, 2 tears in a bucket. Y'all know how to finish that? Fuck it. So I thought everybody knew that one. Right, like we ain't crying no, they said we ain't crying no tears over that, like 2 tears in a bucket. So, and why? Because the entirety of the American populace has been massively exploited by a healthcare industry whose sole purpose is to extract from us. And so the people are ready to have unvarnished truths told to them in a fashion that's not sugarcoated. And I'll just use this as an opportunity to talk about that particular issue, right? The healthcare issue. Single payer healthcare, the Democrats passed it when Schwarzenegger was governor because they knew he would veto it. And then as soon as he's out of power, hemming and hawing and shucking and jiving, and suddenly they can't get anything passed. And then 2022, everybody said they have all the votes. And then $1 million is laid down by the insurance industry on the Democratic Party. Suddenly overnight, the votes disappear. So we know that in the state of California, we can pass universal health care. And we can pay for universal health care because right now, California taxpayers pay 70 cents on every healthcare dollar anyway. We foot, as taxpayers, 70% of the healthcare costs. I'm going to do a quick math problem for you to illustrate this particular point. 30 cents on every healthcare dollar goes to the insurance company, middle-making, rent-taking class. Take that 30% out. We already pay enough to pay for the healthcare in the state of California. You just got to cut out the damn middleman. When I go into to red communities, independent communities, and make that argument, there is no counter argument. Nobody thinks that somebody should be getting paid to deny your relatives cancer treatment. And that's how we're going to win. We're going to win by going in and telling unvarnished truths, and not just from my perspective, but with talented surrogates and fellow community members from across the spectrum speaking their truths. And yeah, I think that the people are ready for it. I know this is a long-winded answer, but I want to throw one last thing in. The Muslim community stepped up big in terms of providing financial support for our campaign. Essentially, we raised more in the 10 weeks that I was on the campaign. We raised more than twice as much in the 10 weeks that I was on the campaign as we raised in the 10 months that preceded it. Wow. And that was largely because the Muslim community got off the bench and into the game with respect to fundraising. I asked one of these very, very wealthy Muslim donors, like, doesn't it make you nervous how redistributive this talk is? Like, I don't care if your accountant is David freaking Copperfield, you are paying your 20%. Like, all y'all rich billionaires got to pay in, like no more 0.75 effective tax rates for Tesla. We're tired of the middle class subsidizing, billionaires. So I asked, like, doesn't this kind of redistributive talk make you nervous? He said, oh no. He said, the ruling class always underestimates how close the people are to revolution when wealth inequalities reach this kind of scale. Mm-hmm. The reality is the only thing that is going to make sense to people under the kind of darkness that we are inhabiting right now is to tell them the truth. Don't sugarcoat it. Look them dead in the eye and saying that foot that I've been feeling on my neck for 4 centuries, you are just now starting to get a taste of it, and it's about to get a whole lot worse.